welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to talk to you about Calla by Colin Walsh. This book is a dark, literary thriller set in the fictional town of Kinloch in Ireland. At least I think it's a fictional town. There are towns in Ireland called Kinloch, but I think this Kinloch is a fictionalised Kinloch. But if you live there, if you're Irish and I'm wrong, then don't hesitate to tell me I'm wrong. I picked this book up because I was just hypnotised by the cover. I just thought the cover was so dark and beautiful. I love this idyllic picture of them sitting in a wheat field and there's the sun and the lens flare, but then her face is scribbled out and it's all shiny. I also just love the bold red text and the font and everything. I just think the branding is really on point. This book is not for the faint of heart. It does cover some really dark, really serious topics. Personally, I feel that looking up the trigger warnings does spoil the book. I happened to see trigger warnings before really getting into the book, and it did spoil a twist for me. If you're someone that has trauma and you do need trigger warnings, then maybe second guess picking this one up, or look at the trigger warnings but just know that it might spoil it, but then that's okay because you might figure out the book's not for you. If you're not someone that usually needs trigger warnings, if you're quite good with horror, you're quite good with true crime, the darkness of humanity, really dark stories, then maybe go into this blind so that you don't spoil it for yourself, but just know that there are triggers and that some people may need warnings. I'm going to try not to give any spoilers because it is a thriller and you kind of want to figure out as you go along what's going on, but there might just be tiny mild spoilers just as a fair warning before you get into this video. This story is told from this perspective of three different characters. These three people are now adults, but they all used to be part of the same friendship group when they were children. This friendship group originally comprised 6 members, and one of those members, Calla, I think I'm pronouncing her name right, but I'm not sure. If you're Irish you can correct me. And Calla, back when they were all about 14 or 15 or something, went missing and she was never found. We come to these 3 characters on a day when they're all back in Kinloch. 2 of them had left and one of them had stayed in Kinloch this whole time, but 2 are visiting, and they all kind of meet up. And on this day, they have actually found Calla's bones. The police have actually found them in a duffel bag that's been dumped on a building site, I think with her skull sitting on top. This kind of opens up the investigation again in a way, and it really piques these 3 people's interest. It makes them want to dig into what happened to Calla and try to solve her murder. The friendship between these 3 remaining group members is a little bit tenuous, and there's a little bit of tension between them, which we kind of figure out why and what's gone on throughout the course of the novel. The novel kind of flips back and forth between the present day. It covers about 5 days where these 3 people are looking into the murder and trying to figure out what happens. And it also flicks back to the past when they were 14 or 15, and there's the 6 of them, there's Calla, and it's covering the events that happened in the run up to Calla going missing. So we kind of get both stories unfurling at once as we try to figure out what happened to Calla. These kind of 6 interwoven stories really weave together masterfully. I really love when stories are told in this kind of tapestry weaving together kind of way. I think it's a really great way to tell a mystery because it naturally that withholds a lot of information from the reader even when the characters know that information themselves. For example, besides our 3 characters that narrate the story and Calla, there are 2 other characters that are a member of the group when they are younger, and we really don't know what's gone on with them. It takes maybe about halfway through the book before you finally get answers about what's happened with those 2 characters and where they are now. And this is obviously something that the narrators are up to speed on, but the way they withhold and then give the reader the information at the opportune time for the maximum kind of emotional impact and meaning, it really makes for a really gripping story that really pulls you in, gives you lots of questions, and then withholds the answers. A really big theme of this novel is how the characters are all woven together and how they are always influencing each other, how their stories influence each other's stories. And I think that the structure of the story really hammers that theme home as well as the content of the story. And that to me is a sign of a very well written, artful story. I thought this was really masterful literary fiction from Colin Walsh here. He also writes each of the 3 narrators with a really distinctive voice and distinctive perspective. The character of Joe is written in the 2nd person perspective, so it's written as you throughout the book. We then have Mush and Helen, and they are both written in first person, I perspective. But they each both have a distinct voice as well. Mush is a lot more colloquial, a little bit lower class in the way he speaks compared to Helen, who, you know, has left Kinloch and kind of the world's opened up for her a little bit more. It's really important that you can see these differences and these distinctions between characters when you've got different perspectives coming in, especially when they are both I perspectives. I'm writing a dual perspective book at the moment, also both in the first person, and it is really hard to get that distinct voice and to get differentiation between the characters, especially when, you know, it's your first draft and your voice as a writer is kind of coming into it in both characters. I think it must take a lot of editing to kind of get it right, and also just sitting down and centering yourself within that character as a writer to really commit to that unique voice of the character. This was also a really fast-paced book. It was set over about 4 or 5 days in the present kind of day timeline, and it was great because I happened to just sit one weekend and read this over again about 4 or 5 days. Despite the fact that it was literary fiction and it wasn't completely basic, easy writing, it was still very easy to read. It was very consumable. It was very gripping, and it was easy just to blast through this book. I really liked that at the beginning of this book there was a lot of occult and kind of witchy folklore references. It made you think that like maybe what had happened to Calla was something supernatural, almost like almost Blair Witch Project kind of vibes. And mild spoiler now, I do think that was just a little bit of a misdirection, but I liked it and I really appreciated it because it opened up a lot of questions and it really built this creepy, spooky atmosphere. The reality of what happens with Calla is horrifying, and it's a lot more mortal world. It's not as supernatural as maybe I thought it was going to be in the beginning. I think this book is really grounded in reality and really explores like the horrors of man and what man can do. The setting of this little Irish town of Kinloch really was also like a character in itself. The cast of characters is a little bit complex, so at the start of this book Colin kind of lays out all of the characters, the main 6 of the gang, but also all of their family members, and he lays out Kinloch among these kind of as a character in itself. It was like a play with a like casting list at the beginning. This was really helpful because the relationships between everyone was quite complex, and I think if you didn't have that you would have been a little bit lost of who's who, but every time I was confused I could just flick and could be like, okay, he's his cousin, right, I understand. It really brought you into the town. It made you feel like you were almost part of this small town, like you knew everyone. And the book was very true to its Irish roots. The town is very Irish, everyone has very Irish names, the dialect is Irish, and I think all of the occult references in the beginning kind of have this Irish folklore, almost Irish pagan kind of feel to it. But again, this gives way to even darker and more grounded in reality issues perhaps with Irish culture. I thoroughly enjoyed this book overall, and I think once enough time has passed, once I've forgotten all of the twists and turns, I'll definitely give this book a reread one day. If nothing else, just to learn a bit more about the craft of writing and writing in these multiple perspectives and timelines, because I do think this was a masterclass and it was perfectly executed. If you've read the book, let me know your thoughts below in the comments, but give some spoiler warnings to people because, you know, it's not a viral book. I think it was a bestseller. It was Waterstone's like book of the week in the thrillers category in the week that I bought it, but you know, I'm sure there's a lot of people that haven't read it and want to experience it without spoilers, so you know, just put spoilers, hit enter a few times. Nice and courteous to everyone. Thanks for watching. Like this video if you liked it. Please subscribe. I'm really trying to build this channel and it's a struggle, to be honest. So if you like this at all, I know not every book review resonates with everyone because we've not always read the book, but please follow. I'm sure I'll have some books coming up that will interest you. I like to read a wide variety and I'm always looking for recommendations. If there's any books that you'd like me to read and do a review of, then let me know in the comments again. Anyway, thank you for watching and tune in next time. Bye!